Hi everyone, back to the more YouTube channel. It's Chris back with my rant stroke thought of the day. Wow, this one is definitely topical, isn't it, right now? We're talking about Eddie Howe, we're talking about Mitchell. Is it a fight? Is it civil war, as some journalists have called it? Or is it all just a storm in the teacup? We don't really know. I'm going to give you my opinion on it as best as I can, really, right now. So, obviously, this explosive piece came out by Craig Hope in the Daily Mail. I quite like Craig. I quite like what he does. I know some of you aren't a big fan of Craig. I've met him in person as well. He's a nice fella, to be fair. But he seems to have some kind of inside source in the club who has talked about the aftermath of Mitchell's interview that I think was kind of instigated by the PIF, saying you better get out there and explain why we haven't signed any players, we're looking bad and you better do it. And there just seems to be a bit of a stench of frustration behind the scenes, possibly from Mitchell, that he's walked into this club thinking that he's going to have the keys to the city, everything was going to run through him, he was going to be the main fucking man. And I'm not sure that the manager feels the same way. Now, I'm not trying to blame Eddie Howe in this particular equation. What I think about Eddie Howe is he's a great manager for starters. And Eddie Howe is the man who saved Newcastle from the trapdoor, really. I'll get more into that in a second. But I don't think Eddie Howe is keen on the modern day football structure, i.e. a director of football basically calling the shots and the head coach being just that, the guy that coaches. That's even been interfered with, if you believe Craig Hope's piece, where James Bunce is on the training pitch every single day. Apparently, I can imagine that rattles Eddie no end, the methodical nature of the man itself. But going back to this piece, obviously, apparently Mitchell's comments about the infrastructure not being fit for purpose, that kind of provoked a bit of a response from Eddie Howe. And he kind of came out and said that he was proud of what the football club had done, the signs that they made in the press conference today. He did seem a little bit, I wouldn't say spiky or on edge. He's brilliant at handling these really difficult questions. He's had to do it ever since he walked the door at Newcastle United, about relegation, the media darling that was Steve Bruce, by certain members of the media, hoping that Eddie Howe was going to fail. I remember them laughing when we appointed Eddie Howe, richest club in the world, and Eddie Howe was the manager. And then, fast forward 3 or 4 months later, they're all wanting him for the England job, and they still want him for the England job, and that's why they keep talking about him for the England job. Sounds like Frank Lampard might be the favourite for that. Good luck, England. But anyway, going back to this particular situation. So Mitchell's comments, apparently, according to Craig Hope's piece, or his internal source, went down like the Titanic, upset quite a few people. I think Steve Nixon's been a little bit upset as well, who's done a great job scouting, you must say. A guy that's helped pull out gems like Bruno Guimaraes and Sven Botman for under 40 million quid. You've got to applaud the bloke. You can't criticise the bloke. But I do get a bit of a distinctive whiff of arrogance about Mitchell. And it's a weird one because he comes with great pedigree and he's done a good job wherever he's been. And success breeds arrogance. That happens in every walk of life, business or football. You look at the likes of Jose Mourinho and Cristiano Ronaldo, just the definition of arrogance, but backed up with the ability they both had as a manager and a player. And it's the same in business as well. I say it in my own, my non-podcast job, that success brings arrogance in certain people. You see people change over the years when success comes. And maybe that's what's happened with Mitchell here, that he's maybe got a little bit too big for his britches and he's come against a bit of a brick wall in the shape of Eddie Howe. But the big question here is for the PIF that runs Newcastle United. And I don't want to get too hyperbolic and people accuse me of being Craig Hope Mark II. I guarantee you I'm not. I'm about 4 foot smaller than Craig Hope, to be fair. But going back to this situation, the PIF have got to ask themselves a serious question here. Who is more important to Newcastle United, Eddie Howe or Paul Mitchell? It'll take you a microcosm to answer that. It's Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe is the man that saved Newcastle United from the trapdoor. He's not only saved us from relegation, he's performed fucking miracles, getting us in the Champions League, getting the best out of players, turning Joe Linton from a shit striker to a midfield enforcer, getting the best out of likes of Sean Longstaff, Miggy Almiron, motivating players and getting players on side like Guimaraes and Isaac and players like that. He is so important to this football club and where it needs to go, that you cannot run the risk of upsetting this guy just because of this bloke that you've appointed. Now, I understand they want to be number one, and they maybe see this infrastructure in place in other clubs around the world. But you look at how many managers they've been through, the likes of PSG, it's like a revolving fucking door of managers. And Newcastle United, you didn't want to be that. They wanted the stability. They wanted Eddie Howe to be the manager for 10 plus years. But employing a guy like Mitchell to ruffle the feathers and upset them is not really going to be the way to achieve that. So there is another big question here. Is PIF, do they care about what's important for Newcastle, or is it about what's important to PIF? That's the big question we have to ask here. You know, the new stadium is, you know, the rumours in the background. I can see that happening, increasing the revenue. I think Darren Eales has not really endeared himself to the fans since he stepped into the hot seat, as Craig Hope said in his video earlier on that I watched. You know, this is on him. This failure transfer market is on him, and Mitchell is his man, so it's on him as well. I feel like he put Mitchell up in front of the firing squad, but I just get the feeling that there is animosity behind the scenes between these two. I know they're trying to work through it, but the January window is fucking huge, not just for Newcastle United, but certainly for Paul Mitchell. If we don't deliver, and he doesn't deliver players that Eddie Howe wants in January, then one of them's going to go. Eddie Howe or Paul Mitchell, and I hope it is the latter, because if you lose Eddie Howe from this football club, you're in serious trouble. But this isn't what we need behind the scenes. We need harmony, we need unity, we need togetherness. And you felt like you had that under the previous ownership, but right now you don't feel like that's happening. You feel like there's people who have got their own agendas, there's people who are, you know, their egos are bruised because, you know, they maybe not achieve what they want to achieve, or someone's standing in the way of what they want to achieve. And it just feels a little bit like an episode of fucking Dream Team behind the scenes, really, rather than this great project that's supposed to be built to succeed. I don't want to see articles like this coming out from Craig Hope, but I'm not going to diminish him and throw him away, because there is no smoke without fire. I know there's some people trying to curry favour with the fan base, going, no, stop being so negative. But, you know, journalists, it's their job to write what they hear. You know, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, whether you think it's negative or positive, you have to see different, you know, sides of the spectrum, really, and you have to look at it. Now, yes, it may be a bit of hyperbole, and yes, maybe Craig's, you know, throwing a bit of salt on that to add a bit more spicy flavour, but, you know, there's got to be a little bit of truth in it, that there is frustration behind the team. You've only got to look at Eddie Howe's body language in the press conference answering these difficult questions. And by the way, talk about questions in a press conference. Louise fucking Taylor asking about bromance. Go and look at the video. Look at Eddie Howe's reaction. How in the fuck is this woman calling herself a professional journalist? Please, Newcastle United, ban this ridiculously stupid Mackham twat of a journalist who's got a hidden agenda just to try and make the manager look stupid. She's a fucking moron. Get rid of her. So that's a little side step away from that. A little bit of rant there for you guys. But yeah, this whole thing doesn't really sit well with me. If it's a choice between Mitchell or Howe, it's got to be Mitchell. You got to flick him. You got to get rid. You got to get another manager, another sporting director who can work with the manager and understand it. If Eddie Howe doesn't want to work in this structure, then you've got a big decision to make. Do you want rid of Eddie Howe and get a manager who will work in that structure? Someone like Pochettino used to do it before. Someone like a Nagelsmann who's done it before. Or do you want to stick with Eddie Howe and change the plans and get rid of your sporting director, or make sure the sporting director fully knows that Eddie Howe is calling the shots? Because that's what Eddie's had before in his career at Bournemouth, certainly. You know, and his time at Newcastle so far, he's been the man. He's picked the players. He said who he wants to scout. He says he wants to sign. He's massively involved in it. And I don't think that's what the new infrastructure wants. But, you know, Eddie Howe is either going to have to get on with it or leave the club. And I don't want that to happen. Or the club is going to have to appreciate what Eddie means to the club, how important he is, and change the way they do things. So this is a real clash here of agendas. And I'm not sure who is going to come out on top. We've got a game coming up against Wolves this weekend. We need to win that to keep the momentum going, get rid of this kind of bad smell in the background. But, you know, the more this rumbles on the background of the football club, the more damaging it will be. It'll be for keeping players like Isaac and Gordon and Bruno, for signing new players that won't want to come to a club that's at loggerheads with each other. So I hope this shit gets sorted. If Mitchell needs to get his head out of his arse and respect Eddie a bit more and understand the process and wind Bunce back a bit, or if Eddie has to get on board with it and maybe understand it, I hope we can get some kind of compromise, get back on track, and, you know, get this project moving in the right direction again. Because right now, it just feels like it's stalled a little bit. That's my thoughts on that, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think. We always like to hear from you. Smash a comment, like the video, subscribe, help get us to 9k. We've got a belt of prize to give away. We'll be here for the post-match against Wolves. Come on, jump on the live chat. Let me know what you think. Hopefully, we're talking about another Newcastle United win. Have a belt of Friday. We'll catch you later. Cheers.